So, amongst all the classes that we've done together and that we've learned together about about Tanakh, which really span from Geonim and Rishonim to a few classes on Yirmiyah, a few classes on Yeshaya, and really Geonim and Rishonim, all those classes were centered on what I could try and term Omek HaPeshat. In other words, thank you. We were dealing with Omek HaPeshat in what we were trying to accomplish. We were trying to analyze the Peshat and trying to understand the depth of the words of the Navi in the Amkut HaPeshat as much as we can. And we use whatever commentaries, whatever we can to help decode or to try and understand. Really, again, the term that I like to use is Omek HaPeshat. Peshat, but very often Peshat is always classified as something simpler. What we've tried to show is that actually, through comparative analysis, and really how the Mefarshim are dealing with, really we try to delve with understanding the words in front of us. Today is going to be, and I mentioned this yesterday, very different. This will be nothing like anything we've ever learned because I'm really not going to focus on Peshat of the perek at all. I'm not even going to read it. I'm not even going to. I think it even would be superfluous even to go through the details of it. You've already heard that on the tape, and the narrator, I'm sure, did a much better job than I can ever dream of doing, as that expert lecturer that is narrating Yehezkel. So I really won't even begin to try and rival that very hashuv lecturer. So we're not even going to, like I said, really deal with this. So like I said, this class is going to be very different than anything we've really seen. What I'd like to discuss is the what we'll call the way Merkabah, Ma'ase Merkava, has been interpreted throughout the generations, and what it has meant to different generations of interpretation. In other words, and it's ironic because Merkabah has meant different things to different people, and it's almost meant things whatever you wanted it to mean, so to speak. And I guess the first place to start really is in the Tanakh. So, we'll ask, how many times does the word Merkabah appear in Yehezkel? Anybody? We've all read it, so how many times? Well, if I'm asking you, you could pretty much guess what the answer is going to be. How many? 0. The word Merkabah does not appear in Yehezkel. The word Merkabah does not appear in any of the references to what we call Merkabah Prakim. The word, it's not in Yehezkel Aleph, it's not in Yeshaya Vav, it's not in Daniel, and it's not in the Melachim Bet chapter. Right? We'll talk about all those 4 chapters, because those are the 4 chapters that are going to have different terms in terms of what we classically call Merkabah. But there is one place that the word Merkabah does appear, Merkabah many places, in terms of God. There is one place that Merkabah does appear, and that is Divrei Hayamim, Aleph, perek Kafhet, Pasuk Het. Alright, where is it? Okay, here it is. So in Divrei Yamim Aleph, perek Kafhet Pasuk Yod Het, we're told about the Tavnit of Shlomo's Beit HaMikdash. ולמזבח כתורת זהב מזוקק במשקל, ולתבנית המרכבה הקרובים זהב לפורשים ושוחחים על ארון ברית אדוני. So here we have a reference to the Merkabah with the Kruvim. That really is the only reference. Now, as I mentioned, there are different places in Tanakh, and we should where, so to speak, we have elements of the chariot of God, right? We know Yehezkel Aleph, right? Because that's the chapter we've read. That you'll see that has that's probably the most famous of the Merkavah chapters, which talks it, right? And then the other chapter really is in Yehezkel, a smaller description, and Yehezkel perek Yud, where you'll find the different hayot and the different aspects in a different context. And the kruvim are used in replacement of the shor, right? So that is the one difference between Yehezkel Aleph and Yehezkel Yud. Another reference is Yeshaya Vav. Yeshaya Vav, which we've seen, is a description of Yeshaya's vision of a Merkavah and his seraphim, much shorter, only about 4 or 5 psukim. And the Gemara does say, by the way, Kol ma Yehezkel Ra'a, Yeshaya Ra'a. Anything that Yehezkel saw, Yeshaya saw. But Yeshaya Ra'a ke ben krach. Yeshaya was like a ben krach, so he was used to it, so his description was less excited. But Yehezkel ke ben kfad. But Yehezkel was like a ben kfad, that he was so enthralled by what he saw, he wasn't used to it, so to speak, that he wrote it all down in greater detail. Many understand, according to that it would be Yeshaya would be a even greater Navi than Yehezkel. Others interpret it in different ways. The other place where we have a, so to speak, Merkavah is from the words of Micha to Ahav, right, in Melachim. In Melachim Aleph, perek Kafbet pasuk Yutet, when Yehoshaphat and Melech Israel are going to a war, and Yehoshaphat says, you have a Navi, before we go to war together, do you have a Navi? And so they bring in a bunch of Navi Esheket that could stamp him, and then Yehoshaphat says, don't you have a Navi Hashem? So I have one, but he's always going to tell me bad things. And of course they bring in Micha, and of course what happens? He tells him you're going to lose. And then he says, Melech Yisrael tells Yehoshaphat, I told you he's only going to tell bad things about me. So he says, Micha responds, Vayomer lachen shema davar Adonai, ra'iti et Adonai yoshev al kis'o, v'kol siva shamayim omed alav b'yamino u'shmalo. Right, there's Hashem yoshev al kis'o, v'kol siva shamayim b'yamino u'shmalo. Vayomer Hashem mi yiftech da'av v'yav v'yipol v'ramot gilad, vayomer zeh becho v'zeh becho, v'yetz haruach v'yomod ani afatenu vayomer Hashem elav. So again, we have this idea of a divine court. So again, we have in Yehezkel Aleph, we have a description of God's chariot, so to speak, with the hayot and the ofanim, right, and the hashmal, and a kiseh above everything. In Yehezkel Yod, a little bit of a repetitive message. In Yeshaya Vav, a smaller message. In Melachim Aleph, we have this description of God sitting on this kiseh, and the kiseh continues to be a message all over the place. So it's more, instead of the Merkabah, it's more the kiseh, and he has his entourage, which he discusses, the seraphim. In our place, it's Yeshaya also brings the seraphim, Yehezkel brings the hayot, and he brings the ofanim. There's one other place in Daniel Zayin. So these are the places where throughout the Tanakh, so to speak, the Merkavah description in the Peshat of the Psukim is prevalent and it's being used. But like I said, the word Merkava there is never used to describe it. Hiseh and different Malachim, but never Merkava, except in that one place in Divrei Hayamim that I mentioned. Now, the Merkava almost immediately draws attention to many Mefarshim. Right away in apocryphal literature, Hochma ben Tzira starts to quote Merkava, calls and uses the term Merkava, Razea Merkava, Hadrea Merkava, and describes it. We know we have fragments from the Qumran sect that deal with the Merkava description at great length. So we have it taking hold in sectarian groups, even in Second Temple period, especially the sectarian mystical groups, and we have a whole host, and I'm not even going to list of, whole host of Merkava mystical literature during Second Temple period, the Hechalot. We even have multiple. Well, Hachalot comes later in the Second Temple, but you have multiple midrashim and stuff that takes in apart about the Merkava. But in the Rabbinic literature, Merkava now has a very interesting development. We're told the famous Mishna in Masechet Hagigah, which everyone's familiar, and Dorshin, right? So we're told that we're not allowed to be doresh, and we're not allowed to be doresh three things. The Mishnah in Hagigah tells us we can't be doresh three things. And what are those three things? So we can't be doresh en dorshin barayot bishlosha. Arayot, meaning the parasha of the arayot, you cannot make derasha. You can't in with three people. It has to be less than that. It's too many people. Velo b'maaseh bereshit b'shnayim. And Ma'ase Bereshit, you can't do with two. Now that means, when we say, En doshim barayot b'shlosha, it's two plus him. Two plus him, that you can't do. En doshim b'Ma'ase Bereshit b'shnayim, right? Velo b'Merkava b'yahid. And even Merkava, even alone. Okay. So we have these three things. Now, why in dorshin barayot? That's an easy one. Why in dorshin barayot b'shlosha? Well, what happens is if you teach two students, you can be focused on one. The other one tones in and out. Here's what he wants to hear. Here's leniencies. And Perashat Arayot is something most people want to be lenient on, and it has a tremendous amount of severity to the deen. So that's why. Arayot is clear the reason because of potential error. Now, the other two, Ma'ase Bereshit b'shnayim, and here, Velo b'Merkava b'yahid. And you can't be doresh b'Merkava b'yahid. Well, the question is, why not? Why can't you be doresh in the arayot b'yahid? So there are two potential reasons to explain this. One, as brought down in the Gemara in Hagigah, a few pages later, it says velo b'merkava b'yahid. You can't be doresh b'merkava b'yahid. So he says Tanei Rabbi Hayav Amosrin ro rashi perakim, and you can tell him a little bit hints. And Amar Rabbi Zera en mosrin perakim el la'av bedin, right? Only av bedin kol mish doeg libo doeg b'kirbo. So the Gemara now has a discussion as to what is the reason, what is the danger from this situation. So the Gemara talks about a story in which it says a young tinok was involved with the Ma'ase Merkava, which is the Hahu Yinuka the Darash b'Hashmal. He was doresh in the Hashmal, which is part of the Merkava. V'nafka nura, and fire came out from the Hashmal, va'achalteh, and it consumed him. the way most Mefarshim explain this is that this Yinuka, meaning what this young child, is somebody who is intellectually unready for entering into this study. And as he did enter into the study, he was consumed by it, meaning he was consumed by he wasn't ready to do it, and he erred in his interpretations, and he was consumed by that error, and he was burnt, so to speak, by his false interpretations. So one reason, if that's correct, is that we are worried, and it's not far off, similar to Arayot, we were worried about the potential of error. And as you worry about the potential of error in such a severe thing, you can then be led astray, and you can miss something, and you can now, in such a serious perasha, you can now be led off. This is exactly how HaRambam, time and time in the Perusha Mishnayot and in the introduction to his Moreh Nevuchim, he repeats this theme very often. And he says, he gives a mashal, if you were going for a journey, if there are three things you could do. You can go on the journey with proper provisions, and you will survive the journey. You cannot go on the journey, and you could go on the journey without the proper provisions. That's the worst case. To go on the journey without the proper provisions is the worst thing you can do, because you will not only not make it, but you can put yourself in danger. Whereas if you didn't go to the journey, okay, you won't get there, but you'll still be safe. So too, he says, the Merkava. The Merkava in all of its depth, he says there's a danger if you enter into it unprepared, you will lose, so to speak, the effect of understanding anything. The second interpretation of what problems could be with learning Ma'ase Merkava, because this based on HaRambam and that Gemara, we can assume that we understand that the problem is that you will not understand. You will not go in appropriate depth. But that should suffice as long as the student is intelligent enough. The demand should be the intelligence of the student. What does it have to do with that you have to do it privately? Why can't I teach one student or two students who are deep thinkers? Or at least one student, right? Why can't I do that? Right? So there's another reason. And the other reason is Mishum Kvod Hashem. And this idea of Merkabah was understood as the so much very intimate description of Hashem, and therefore it is a violation almost of a modesty issue. It's a violation of my intimate relationship with Hashem that I do it in front of other people. So you have two reasons. Now, I want to veer off for a minute and think a little bit about what those two reasons mean, because they really have some very interesting different approaches on what prophecy is about. And really, I'll use now a mahloket between HaRambam and Hasdai Kreskas and Hashem. And HaRambam understands the level of hashgaha, and that'll affect the level of nevuah, to a person's intellectual ability, right? Intellectual understanding of God. The more you learn, the more you understand of Kadosh Baruch Hu, the greater you're connected, the greater hashgaha he shows on you, and the stronger the connection. Kreskas in Or Hashem comes very close. He says, yes, hashgaha is dependent on us, but it's not dependent on our understanding of Hashem. It's not dependent on our understanding of His messages. It's dependent on our love. It's depending on our connection, on our desire, on our ahavat Hashem. And the more ahavat Hashem you have, it's not some dry intellectual idea. The more ahavat Hashem you have, the more love you show to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the more desire you want to cling to Hashem, the more He clings to you. And that is a little bit of a different approach of Kreskas than HaRambam. Let's go back. It's very possible that there are two ways to look at nevuah. On the one hand, the nevuah could be, as HaRambam would understand, the showing of the glory of the deep secrets of God. so to speak, almost the mashal, right? You have a guest invited in, and you show him your secrets. And so this is the Navi. The Navi is invited into the palace, and God displays his greatness, his secrets. If that is the way you look at it, then the problem certainly will be with something as deep as Merkabah. These are extremely deep secrets, and therefore only specific people are allowed to do that. However, if you look at the relationship as a relation of intimacy, like Cheskas and Hashkaha, then the intimate relationship and the Nibu'ah is really an intimate relationship between man and God. At that point, we can understand the other reason of prevention of the Merkabah, which really would be what? Which really would be a modesty issue. Now, at the end of the day, I think both are involved, because we have both prohibitions. We have the intellectual level of the person. He has to be Hacham, Mevin Midato, he has to be Abedin, but he also has to be, in addition, he also has to be an Libo Doeg Bikirbo, right? He has to have that yearning desire, that burning desire to know. So on that level, there is the intellect, and there is the aspect of the ahava, the desire to love, and also that the fact that it's an intimate thing shows that only one person can do it, and you cannot do it in public. You cannot do it with more than one person, because that's a personal, intimate relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So I think at the end of the day, at least from this Merkabah prohibition, we see that they're both have aspects to them, the essence of the problem of why. And so that's really the endorshi. Now we also have the Mishnah in Masechet Megillah. The Mishnah in Masechet Megillah tells us that there's something else you're not allowed to do with the Merkabah, and that is that you cannot read it as a Haftarah, right? That the Merkabah should not be read as a Haftarah. Rabbi Yehuda disagrees. Ma'ase Merkava. Em naftirin b'Merkava. Rabbi Yehuda matir. Right? Rabbi Yehuda disagrees, and he says you're allowed to use it as a Haftarah. Now, the Gemara, later on that discussion, Gemara Lamed Aleph, right, says that we do maftir it, which is actually how we do it. We do it on Shavuot. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Right? And we actually do, we're maftir on the Merkabah. So you have to understand that on at least the halakha seems to be like Rabbi Yehuda, and at least on the level of lehaftir, being that it's not that level of penetration, it's simply a reading, maybe that it's permissible. And maybe one can extend it even a little further, that on the day of Shavuot, we're allowed a little bit of a glimpse inside. We get an intimate glimpse in with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and so that would be a reason why we would permit at least the haftir, if not to study publicly on Shavuot. Elsewhere, the idea of Merkabah is brought down in rabbinic literature in Gemara Masechet Sukkah Daf Kafhet Amud Aleph. The Gemara tells us about Rabban Yohanan ben Zakkai. Hillel had many students. The greatest of them were, 30 were like Moshe, 30 like Yoshua, and the 20, and then the greatest of them was Rabbi Yonatan ben Uziel, and the weakest of them was Rabbi Yohanan ben Zakkai. And Rabbi Yohanan ben Zakkai lists a whole litany of things that he was able to do and know and this. And then he said, Davar Gadol v'Davar Katan. And Davar Gadol is Ma'ase Merkava. And Davar Katan is Havayot Abaye v'Rava. So in other words, the Davar Katan is the intricacies of the halakha discussion, and the Davar Gadol in the Gemara says is this Ma'ase Merkava, not telling us at all what it is. We have other Gemarot, the Yerushalmi, in which we have the story of Rabbi Yohanan sitting down and having dirasha on Merkava and getting off and sitting down bechavod and having Rabbi Yohanan ben Zakkai and Rabbi Elazar ben Arach being doresh the Merkava for him, and him sitting down and listening to the dirasha of the Ma'ase Merkava. And there are multiple stories about the depth of Merkava surrounded by fire, and all sorts of descriptions of this great idea in rabbinic literature of Merkava. We have many midrashim on Ma'ase Merkava. Multiple. I mentioned earlier the Hechalot. We have even a midrash in addition to it being in Bereshit Rabbah, in Shemot Rabbah, in Tanhuma. We also have what's called a Merkava Rabbah, part of a Merkava Shlema, which is actually its own idea. So Merkava seems to be taking off a lot when it comes to rabbinic times, but we never really get in rabbinic literature what it is. We're sort of told about it. We're sort of told to keep away, an arm's length, but we're never really told anything about what it could be or what it might be or what it is. Now, that starts to change a little bit when we get to the medieval period. And not fully, but in the medieval period, the rabbis start to deal with this idea of Merkava on multiple levels. And like I said, at least some of the points that I brought down, if not Yehezkel, but maybe the Micha chapter or the Yeshaya chapter. So, Rabbi Yehuda Levi in the Kuzari, in Heli Gimel, Siman Ayin Gimel, is the last, has an interesting description here of this. Now, the problem with the Merkava for the medievals, now, in the medieval literature, there are really two schools of interpretation. There's what we'll call the philosophical interpretation, and there's the Kabbalistic interpretation, right, of the Merkava. The problem for some of the philosophers is what? Well, what's going to be the obvious problem for the medieval philosophers to deal with the Merkava? I mean, it just sticks out. The obvious first problem. You read that chapter, and you come away and say, this is going to be a problem. HaRambam's going to have a problem. What's going to be his problem? There's anthropomorphism all over the place, right? It seems to be an anthropomorphic interpretation, so we have to deal with that. So that's really one of the first fundamental issues that the medieval philosophers are going to deal with when they approach Merkava. So, like I mentioned, the Rabbi Yehuda Levi, I'm going to read a little portion of the Kuzari. He talks about the rabbinic literature and our responsibility towards rabbinic literature, and he starts with halakha, and then he gets to this idea of agadot, and he says something interesting about agadot as we go on. He says, "Ba'asher agadot, harei yesh behem hamishot hatza'ah b'akdama l'inyan sherotzim lahaziko la'ashero." There are ideas that our rabbis wanted to get across, and they do it in this very interesting setting, a very when God came down to Mitzrayim. All they want to do is, and really Rabbi Levi is allegorizing, not just really making a metaphor, he's turning it into a really allegory, in which he means, all that means is to say that it was b'ratzon Hashem, that all this happened with the will of God. Lo b'mikreh v'lo b'emsa'im achirim. Right? And then he says, right? Right? And then he says, Ve'omro al derech ma she'omrim kibyachol, as if to say, or to say. If it could have happened that way, which it cannot, it would have happened this way, so to speak. That's the one I wanted to look at. Right? I see God sitting on his throne. That's the chapter I read to you. Ush'ara ma'armar. V'lo ya be'emet yoter me'omro hine natan Hashem ruach sheker b'fi kol neviyecha ele. It's a purely allegorical approach. This has nothing other than to get over an idea that God put a ruach sheker in Ahab's heart. That's all it is. It's not. He doesn't even go to the point of metaphor. It's just pure allegory. The ruach, the this, Hashem sitting on a throne. All that is just to get across a story, to get across one thing. God tricked Ahab. That's it. So the entire corpus of the idea of the throne of God and the Merkabah and all of that, for the Yehuda Levi, is just to get across an idea in very flowery terms. And that's really, he doesn't deal much more with it, Rabbi Yehuda Levi. A little bit further here in this in this approach is the approach now of Rasag in the Emunot V'Deot. Rasag in Emunot V'Deot, perek bet, perek yud. He looks at it a little differently. And he has a very famous shita that HaRambam quotes a lot when it comes to a lot of his nevuot. And he says, he says, you know what? That these, first of all, he says, he was questioned by a questioner, says the Dmut is like the Dmut Adam. God is described in these anthropomorphic terms. How do you remove anthropomorphism? Malachim, נושאים אותו מעל מושב, נושא כמו שממל הרקיע של ראשם, כמראה אבן ספיר, דמות כיסא, ועל דמות כיסא, דמות מראה אדם, עליו מלמעלה. Right? So, he's looking at all this, right, quoting our chapter, Yehezkel Aleph, and saying, the questioner to Rasag says, how do you knock out anthropomorphism? It's all over the place. Right, and he goes further. Anu onim. This is how we interpret this to him. Ki adimut hazeh bero'eh, v'chen hamokiseh, v'hamoshav hanisa, v'nosav, kulam nivraim bera'am harabore, mizohar, כדי שיתאמת לנביאו שהוא אשר ניבא אותו בדבריו כמו שנבאר במאמר השלישי. First of all, this is something God creates. This is what he uses very often in Rasag, Kvod Nivra. It's a created image. It's Kvod Nivra. And why is it done? To show the prophet that it was he who was revealed to him. But I want you to understand that this message is from me. And in order to do that, we have this elaborate Kavod HaNivra. And where does it come from, says Rasag? So he continues. He says, he Biram HaBoreh Mizohar, from a light, or maybe a fire, whatever. V'hi demut nechbedet min malachim. this image, this created thing, is greater even than the malachim. Right? It's greater than that. Atzuma bebriata behilat zohar. V'hi nikret, and this is called Kvod Hashem. V'alea hu sh'ti'er echad v'hanevi'im has, right, the Daniel passage. V'alea mashti'er Hachamim Shechina. This is what we also call Shechina. This Kvod HaNivra, this idea of Kvod Hashem and the Shechina. ויש יהיה זוהר ללא דמות אדם. וכבוד השם את נביאו בהשמיע חזון מדמות עצומה ברואה מזוהר הנקרא כבוד השם כמו שביארנו. And he goes on to prove that that's the point, and it's not a it is not a anthropomorphism on HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So again, the entire idea Nefira Sag of, and he's quoting Yehezkel Aleph, of all of this, what Yehezkel is seeing, right? And talking about, of course, the problematic part is the God that's sitting on top of all this. But the idea of all of this is a Kvod Nivra, the purpose of which is so that the Navi should understand the severity of his experience, and the source of his experience is coming from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's Rasag. Again, a little bit more elaborate than Rabbi Yehuda Levi, but still, we're not getting metaphorical details. We're getting this general idea, and that's it. Now, when we come to HaRambam, we find things changing a little bit. Now, HaRambam takes this Ma'ase Merkava and he infuses it with some of his philosophical notions, or preconceived notions.
And Levi and Rasag, they never deal with trying to explain what it actually meant, like
right. I don't know if they felt. Well, clearly, I don't know if he felt it meant anything. It's just this.
Then why would it be all in doresh?
Right. They have to believe something because the Gemara.
Right. So right. So now, but they never. Those are the chapters. They never really engage in what the depth of the Merkabah could mean. At least when they're discussing it. Right, so now,
could be because they felt it was asur, huh?
It could be. But when we get to HaRambam, he says, Lo b'maaseh bereshit b'shnayim. This is the Perush Mishnayot. And Kol sheken im hem yoter. ואומרו שאלנה מישורים יחיד שואל ואין שניים שואלים והטעם כבר זכורנו בפיית דברינו זה החיבור והוא כי ההמון אינם יכולים להבין אותו. The masses can't understand these things. ואינם מתלמדים אלא מאחד לאחד בקבלה. These are things only taught one to one in tradition. כי מעט מזער הוא מה שהשכילו מהם ההמון. Very few people can understand these things. וכשישמע מהשכל תשתבש אמונתו. His whole emunah will be lost when the fool hears it. ומעשה מרכבה אין דורשים בו כלל. Can't at all understand these things at all. You don't doresh it at all. And rather, the person has to understand from himself and just לא צריך לפירוש אלא רומזים לו הרמזים והוא סובר בהם סברתו ושיקול דעתו. Right? You give him hints and he has to figure these things out on his own. Right? And then he says, then he defines, והוא שיש מבינים במעשה בראשית ההוכמה הטבעית, natural sciences. Right? והמכה בהתחלת המציאות. beginning of the Metziut, of how we got here. Right? ורוצים במעשה מרכבה Hochma Elohit, שהוא הדיבור בכל המציאות ומציאות הבורא בדיעתו ותאורה וחיוב כל הנמצאים ממנו. Basically, metaphysical world, which is the divine wisdoms, within all of the Metziut HaBoreh, and understanding is knowledge, and Ta'arav is descriptions, which of course Ta'arim, according to HaRambam, has a whole Hochma in itself. V'hayuv kol nimtza'im mimenu, how everything emanates from him. V'hamalachim, the angels. V'hanefesh, so v'asechel hadavek ba'adam, right? Sechel that clings to the human, which is of course sechel hapoel, through which man connects to the sechel and eventually to the divine. Umashiyah haramita, eschatology that happens after death. Ufi shegadlu elo chmot hashtayim הטבעית והאלוהית וראוי להם להיותם גדולים ומנעו מלמדם כשאר החוכמות הלימודיות. That you don't teach them like you do all other wisdoms. And he says, by man's natural inclination, everyone wants these things, right? Whether he's a fool or smart, he wants to know these things, right? So, and he's going to try and jump, and without any prerequisite knowledge, he's going to. So therefore, what they do, this was a scare tactic on the part of the Hachamim. So the first thing we're starting to get from HaRambam is a little bit of a definition what the general wisdom is. He doesn't talk about how this fits in, but the idea of the mitziut of the malachim and the mitziut of the olamot elyonim and the understanding about the divine and the understanding about the nature of God, understanding about the knowledge of God, and all of these things begin to enter into what he calls Ma'ase Merkava. In the Mishna Torah, in Sefer HaMaddah, he talks about three types of creations, right? He begins with, in perek, changing beings that are made from matter and form. That's like us. Physical world, we're created from form and matter, and we change. Unchanging beings that are created from form and a much different type of matter, homer dak yoter, is what he calls the olam hagalgalim, celestial spheres. And of course, third are incorporeal intelligences, which are the malachim, which are surah bilo homer, form without matter. Now, amongst the highest level in Sefer HaMaddah of the incorporeal intelligences is the Hayot. And he says in Sefer HaMaddah, perek bet, halacha zayin, that only God is above that. Very clear. The only thing above the Hayot is what? Is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Okay, now we're going to plug this into the Merkabah. We'll get interesting. He elsewhere says that the Hayot are under the Kiseh, which would seem to indicate that what? That the Kiseh is Hashem. References to Hashem. Which fits. Because when he discusses in the Moreh Nebuchim Chelik Aleph Perek Tet, he talks about two interpretations of Kiseh. And one interpretation is the heavenly hosts, that give God kavod, right? And that's just like a Kiseh gives you kavod, right? Who sits on a throne? The Kiseh is a throne. That's Malachim. So the Kiseh shows Kavod Hashem, right? And so therefore, he says, "Ubiglal inyan ze nikru hashamayim kiseh, hashamayim kiseh," right? And things like that, and show his great mitziut, right? Not that, God forbid, there is a kiseh, and aval mashi trahava bo asafa bro kiyad al kesya hu tiur gdulato v'romoto asher en ra'ayut ראוי שתעלה בדמיונך דבר מחוץ לעצמותו, ולא שום נברא רועד שיהיה יתעלה מצוי בלי כיסא ומצוי עם כיסא. Right? God forbid, זה כפירה. Right? To think that he actually needs that. So, ולפיכך הכוונה בכיסא כאן ובכל דומה לו רוממותו וגדולתו שאינם דבר מחוץ לעצמותו. So, now we're dealing with, in this level, the kiseh is his romimut and his gdula, which is not distinguishable from atzmut Hashem in itself. So you have the idea of a kiseh being, on the one hand, the heavenly host that gives God kavod, or his romimut, which is part of his essence. So the kiseh can, in the Sefer HaMadar, be part of this heavenly sphere, which is above the highest level, which is above the hayot, which only thing above the hayot is the kiseh himself. So let's just back up a bit, because it's a little complicated. We have, according to HaRambam, 10 levels of incorporeal intelligences, which we call malachim, and those incorporeal intelligences come from the ishim at the lowest level, which are used to give us nevuah, and rise, and on the highest level, the hayot, and above them, the kiseh, which could indicate some level of romimut Hashem. And this idea is what he understands to be hinted at in this elaborate Merkabah, this elaborate idea of this Merkabah. But HaRambam, in different places in the Moreh, views it different ways. A little later in Chelik Aleph, in perek Ayin, he talks about the idea that Hashem is rochev. Rochev, that Hashem is rochev, and rochev aravot, right? And he discusses there this idea of what is aravot. So on the aravot, which he includes as like a kiseh, he gives a different interpretation, and it talks about the celestial spheres themselves, the Galam Galgalim, and Hashem is rochev aravot to show that he is separate from them, that he is rochev alehem, that he is not part of this system, that he is removed, that he is above, so to speak. So God being on top of all of this shows God as not part of it, that he is running the show and he is removed. And he says, "V'daki kvutzata be'emot harechuvot," the group of animals that are being ridden on, nikraim Merkabah. They're called a Merkabah. V'nichpal ze harbe. V'yasef Yosef Merkavto Merkavat HaMishna, Merkavat Paro. All these are, וראיה כי השמות הנאמנים על מספר הבהמות אמרו, ותעלה ותצא מרכבה במצרים. It shows that the, לפיכך אני אומר, שכיוון שנאמר, כפי שנאמר, שכיסא הכבוד נשאו 4 חיות, קראו החכמים ז"ל מרכבה. דמו למרכבה שהיא 4 הדים. Why is the Hachamim called the Merkabah? Because the kiseh is being carried by these 4 hayot, right? And then in the middle, the Adkan, and this HaRambam does many times, that's enough for now, right? He starts to tell me a little bit of Merkabah, a little bit about God writing it, a little bit about something that God's removed from, a little about these things, Hayot, which we know are Malachim, carrying him, and then he says, that's enough. And every time he does that, he starts, and then he stops, and that's enough. I have no doubt that he did it because he's giving us what he considers the Remazim. Now go figure it out on your own, in light of the Talmudic Isur, right? And then he says, אבל המטרה בפרק זה ואשר בשביל כך הודגשו כי אמרו רוכב שמיים עניינו מסבב הגלגל המקיף ומניעו ביכולתו ובחפשו. When he's רוכב שמיים means he is the cause of everything. He is removed from it, but he is the cause of it operating and moving. So we have this idea somewhat hinted at here. In a similar vein, we get into the most elaborate description, and I will not go, it's very elaborate. We will not read the entire 6 or 7 chapters in the beginning of Perek Gimel of the Moreh. I'll just give a very quick synopsis, but here I'm going to admittedly not be doing the appropriate justice to understanding this. Anyone who needs to learn this in depth with multiple commentaries. In Perek Gimel, in the first 6 or 7 chapters, there is where he discusses the Merkabah in great detail. And there he, unlike almost any other Mefarish before him, will go, not necessarily pasuk, but image by image, and describe the significance of each of the different images. It is a bit cryptic. But before I do so, I just want to actually, in something in Perek Aleph, which I neglected to mention, HaRambam also describes the meaning of Kvod Hashem. And in Kvod Hashem, he interprets it on multiple levels. But he has 3, I just described his first 2. One is a Kvod Nivra, a created thing, which would be similar to Rav Sadia Gaon. And if Kvod Hashem is a Kvod Nivra, let's go back to Rasag, it's a Shekhinah, it's Kvod Nivra, which is created on a one-time basis to show Nivu'ah to the different Nevi'im. And on the other hand, sometimes Kvod Hashem is actually Atzmuto Yitbarach, is the essence of God himself, and of course, removed from anything else. So, and multiple interpretations of what that can mean. Now let's go back to Perek Gimel. So I just want to mention that in Perek Gimel, this is a very elaborate commentary where he explains a lot of detail about the different aspects of the Hayot and the Ofanim and what they each mean and what they each look like. It's somewhat cryptic. Some commentaries, specifically there's one on the Moreh, Ibn Shemuel, he uses HaRambam here to explain that that a lot of what's going on is a references to the Galgalim, the celestial spheres, and the message here is that Kadosh Baruch Hu is behind that elaborate system of Galgalim, and it's the Ofanim that are being actually pushed by the Hayot. The Ofanim have no essence of themselves in Yehezkel. It is the Hayot that actually direct the Ofanim. And he says, therefore, you have the Galgalim. And the Galgalim, why are they mistovevim? Why do they go round? Because each Galgal has a Sechel Nivdal, which is a Malach in charge of it. And those Galgalim have this ultimate desire to unite with that Malach. So they strive. So they are, as the Ofanim are merged by the Hayot, so too the Galgalim are pushed towards their respective Sechalim Nivdalim. And this elaborate system of a sort of the celestial spheres in Aristotelian image is what seems to be being portrayed in the beginning of Perek Gimel. And again, it's very difficult. I'm oversimplifying it, admittedly. There is many commentaries we'd invite to in-depth looking at all the different commentaries on what HaRambam means there. I'm just presenting you one that I just noticed, but there are much more. The ideas of what Merkabah can mean, and HaRambam by far is the most elaborate. I'll just close with, I said I'd mention, a Kabbalistic commentary. So I'm just going to close with one last commentary, and this on the Mishnah is the commentary of the Bartenura. Rabbeinu Obadiah Bartenura, on this Mishnah of Eren Dorshin, he says, he brings HaRambam, and HaRambam brings that Ma'ase Bereshit, Hochma Teva, in Ma'ase Merkava is Hochma Elahit. And he says, that doesn't make any sense. You know why? Because it wouldn't have been called Ma'ase Merkava. He said it should have been called Hochma Merkava. So Bartenura disputes this whole idea of it meaning any idea of metaphysics or physics or philosophical constructs. Rather, he says, right, that what is Ma'ase Merkava? Ma'ase Merkava is how, through the use of the Shemot HaKadoshim, we could use the keter, right, to enter in and witness the multiple mishmarot of the malachim, the watches of the angels, each within an elaborate system, headed betor headed, each one in this elaborate system, one in itself of the other. And that's what he says. So in other words, he has some form of understanding that, and I'm sure there is many, many more, that the Merkabah is not something to be, should be understood through foreign philosophies like the philosophers did, using some elaborate metaphysical system that was external to Torah, and now accepting the Merkabah as a metaphor for that. Rather, it's an internal understanding, as many of the Mekubalim did, internally, that this is some form of ma'arechet, of internal olam, of malachim, and of sfirot, involving the different sfirot and malachim that are being personified here through understanding in this Merkabah. And many of the Hachamim Mekubalim took similar approaches, as Ibn Obadiah did here. So, just to sum up, the idea of Merkabah meant a lot of things to a lot of different people. And as I mentioned, it wasn't necessarily an analysis of the pshat of that perek in Yehezkel, right? It certainly didn't seem to be that. In other words, nobody seems to be trying to, when we talk about Ma'ase Merkava, now the Mefarshim, of course, on the perek too, right? You could read the Mefarshim and they will take you through the pshat like they will any other perek. But when we talk about the idea of Merkava mysticism, or Merkava philosophy, or Merkava things, the way that they're really seeing it as in metaphorical / allegorical, depending on who you terms, in which this is simply, and depending on who you ask, this could be just simply an idea that, according to the Yehuda Levi, it's just this image just to tell you I'm around, and it's coming from me. I've said you're going right, and they don't deal with any more than that, or you can get a little bit more elaborate with HaRambam. Just also, the Ben Ish Hai and the Ben Yehoyada says, the fact that it's a hashmal, right, and it's like a rainbow. So we have a tradition. What happens when you see a rainbow? When a rainbow comes out, what are you supposed to do? Say a beracha. But what else? After you do that, you look the other way. You look the other way. So he says, you know what? When we deal with this stuff in the Merkabah, you really just look the other way, right? Don't pay attention to this, right? Don't try and figure that, right? As we read in the, we could say as we read in under Shana the Piyut, right? Hakor pa'olav, rak elav al tishlach yadecha. Right? In other words, that these are things that are beyond, let's say, beyond our understanding, and therefore we should just almost understand that we don't understand and turn the other way, so to speak. That's been the tradition of where we understand these things and not try to ponder their essence and their in-depth thing, because it is beyond, in his words, human comprehension. So I hope we've elaborated on some level. If there's any questions, not that I'll be able to answer them about the Merkabah, but we'll try. Okay, no questions. End Doshim, right? This is it.